So the mental well-being of men is not often talked about, but it is, of course, very critical for our families, communities, and the greater society as a whole to function optimally. So men too can be affected by common mental health problems. And in recent times, we've seen a number of cases, a number of articles speaking of men taking their own lives. We also read about men who are often subjected to all kinds of abuses. And while we've seen quite some inroads in preventing a lot of abuse towards women, we've also seen some gaps being left behind. And while we're talking leaving no one behind, we want to talk about not leaving the men behind and leaving a vacuum. Well, welcome to In Focus Book Review Mondays, and today we are taking a special focus on a particular book that brings a balance to the gender and a balance to why we need not just focus on one gender, but also remember that men need a voice as well. It is my pleasure, as we cultivate that culture reading, to introduce my guest who is in studio. It's good to have studio guests. I mean, COVID-19 has been quite something. So finally, it is amazing to have our guests coming in studio and having a chuckle or two and even flipping through pages together with our guests on In Focus Book Review Mondays. Help me welcome the author to the book, Man Vacuum, Clive Mukundu. Clive.
Hello, Monika, and good afternoon, Zimbabwe.
Well, it's good to have you, mate. And, well, you are a good friend of mine. And for most parts, we like to talk about the arts. And the arts definitely also incorporate the literary arts. And despite the fact that we talk music a lot, today we want to talk books. We want to incorporate that culture of reading. And hence, in my hand, I have this amazing book you pinned down, Man Vacuum. And I think I'll just tickle you a bit and just say, why the interest to pin a book such as this, Man Vacuum? Indulge us, Simona.
Okay, the idea came about when I was turning 50. That was 2020. So, since I was getting older, I thought to myself that I think I have something to say other than music, because I've experienced life. And looking around, I noticed that there's been an overemphasis on the protection and the guidance of the girl child, and nothing was being done, or very little was being done to protect the boy child, and I noticed a huge gap. So I decided to write a book to advocate for that, so that panongo itoka balance bichana.
In the foreword, you had one very respected gentleman in society who penned the foreword for this book. And if I am to take a cue from what he said, in the fight to equalize things, as happens in many cases, excess or overswings occur where the hammock sees the intended travel and makes a huge hole on the wall on the other side. And you said, there is an increased rate of intentional overswings and an undeclared war to reclaim not only that which was lost, but to invade and disrobe everything male. Very powerful, but it is a very sad statement, to say the least.
Yeah, it's true, because with the coming in of feminism, there's been a lot of rhetoric which is anti-male. Statements like toxic masculinity, every man is a potential criminal. There's been a lot of things that's been said against the male gender. And even the word gender, Pacharo, people just think gender means women. So every time people talk about gender-based violence, they're just talking about the violence against women, forgetting that men also face gender-based violence. So those are some of the reasons which lead to the mass suicide of men as opposed to women. Yeah.
And suicide in particular weeks and months, we've seen a lot of publications men committing suicide. And if you are to delve into some of the reasons, it's pretty disturbing, the reasons behind those suicides. Some are very emotional, some in terms of relationships, some are financial. But it also just calls to show that there is a problem in society. There is a challenge, and our men really are crying out for help. Let's go quickly to chapter 1. You're speaking broken men. And in your first paragraph, you said, most men have lost confidence in their manhood, and very little attention is paid to raising boys into responsible men.
Yeah, as the statement says, I think it's self-explanatory. Like I mentioned before, but all the attention these days is now focused on women, and the statistics that shows that around the world, even in schools, boys are lagging behind because all attention is given to the female gender. So what's happening is we have girls that are very empowered, we've got women that are very empowered, who are supposed to be married to men who have got zero empowerment. About marriage, about relationships, about life, about everything. Yet he's getting married to a woman who is powerful, who has been empowered. That's why, if you remember, I always mention here, because a person of that guidance, even guidance that pure shukura from our elders, from, if you look at our culture, they would guide the boys on life issues, on marriage and everything. But these days, most men, they lack that education, and most of their education, they're getting it from American TV. So some of the things that they follow, in script paper TV, you know, they're being modern, but what is the script paper TV? And because of that, you notice that even they don't even know how to run their marriages. As a result, there are a lot of broken marriages, and broken marriages is one of the reasons that's leading to suicide. Because in most cases, if there's a divorce, for some reason, most courts around the world, they favor women. And in most cases, the children, one in the name cards. And in most cases as well, you notice that the children will be socialized and coached to hate their fathers. So as a result, it leaves the father in isolation. And if you look at the reasons why men commit suicide, isolation is one of them. Because when you get older, and you've got no one on your side, maybe you had a divorce, the children were coached to hate you, it causes isolation. But at the same time, to hate their fathers, it also backfires on the mothers as well. Because what happens with children is children have got two authority figures in their life, the mother and the father. So if you coach your child to hate his or her father, you are teaching them to disrespect authority. And once they learn how to disrespect authority, they will not stop Panababachet, they will even disrespect your authority. So at the end, it backfires on the mothers as well. So, but still, when young that element, isolation is one of the major reasons why men commit suicide, especially men who are in their old age. But
that isolation, Mono, saying that we're still on chapter 1 and we're looking at broken men. But let's take it back to the boys themselves, because if we're speaking broken men, isn't this supposed to come back to starting to when they're boys? Is this where the problem is? And despite the fact that you're saying there is some challenge to say men are being taught to you know, when they're young, they're taught to actually hate their fathers or their male figures, and so forth. But we also need to also understand that given the circumstance equity, we're talking broken men. Shouldn't we go back to when they're children? Shouldn't we look at the family setup to say, even if there's no parent setup with both mom and dad, what has happened to the community raising these families? A community raising a child? What has happened to even relatives coming in and playing a role the uncles, anasekoro. Because if we are continuing to speak about broken men, should we just be blaming the supposed women here? Should we not also be looking at the same men who are also supposed to be playing that parental role or that role of raising boys in order for them to be masculine in a positive way, but at the same time not bringing an imbalance to the society or to the system as a whole?
Westernization has brought individualism. Because ever since we started following Westernization, we noticed that we had a lot of disintegration of our family unit. That's why we now even have orphanages. Because before Westernization, we did not need orphanages. Because your uncle is your father, your aunt is your mother, wife. But these days, because of the disintegration of the family unit due to Westernization, are passing that element. And you raise a good point on the raising of children. Like I always say, these days people are maintaining children, they're not raising children. Because maintaining children is giving them anything they want. But raising children, we are not talking about fees, we are not talking about mariza people when out in my friends, like that's maintenance. We are talking about the values that were instilled in that child, and those values are now missing. And one of the major contributory factors is the, like I said, the divorce and mixana. So we find that there are many men who grow up without their fathers, and partly we are to blame as well. Was the panel and then they go away and leaving the boys to grow up without their fathers. And look at some statistics around the world. Gangsters a lot, prostitution, a lot of crime. It's children who grew up without their fathers. That's why I always say children benefit more from your time than from your money. Okay. So we need to adjust that as well. I think both women and men, we are both to blame.
Feminization of men, you say, and taking a cue, page 3, modern gender equality ideologies seek to paint a picture that portrays men as having it all good. But being a man has its challenges too. The same way being a woman has its own challenges. Then you go down and you say, these days, a successful man is just one accusation away from the total ruin of his career without due process, and stories of men acquitted of rape are often ignored by the media. It's very disturbing. Yeah. But let's talk about what you just said there.
Yeah, the feminization of men was around the world, not only in Zimbabwe. Notice that the masculine. And it seems like behave very feminine where the standard of tests were around the world. There are even countries where men or boy children are forced to get injections. There's some chemicals to reduce their masculinity. And I think it's happening in areas like Sweden and those Scandinavian countries where the capital of feminism. So the idea is that picture there's something wrong with masculinity, and they call masculinity it's toxic. Murumagata crime is blamed on the gender instead of blaming it on the crime. Then you are from maybe masculine power we solve the problem. But you notice that do we say guns they are bad and we should get rid of guns? But we'll be forgetting that even past security, when we protect ourselves, we also use guns. So the blame should be given to crime, not to a gender. So around the world, part of the problem, people are speaking against masculinity as a whole. The masculinity must be banned or must be get rid of. So if you notice a problem in the Western world, Western world, it's just a matter of time. Because you notice any problem that you see in the Western world is just a matter of time before it gets here, because we are always copying from the West. So that's what I meant on that paragraph.
And you say men's issues are generally not taken seriously often because men hardly speak out speak out a lot as they're raised on the notion that men are strong and do not cry in patriarchal societies. You say crying or speaking out is called sissy, and this is the greatest insult to a man. Are men really insulted when we call you sissies?
Yeah, it's very insulting.
How insulted do men feel when there are these labels, when they're treated some way? You're a man. Talk to us.
You feel castrated because you are not a man. You don't go a lot of dignity, power. And you notice with around the world, there's a statement here on Chris Rock, and the men are only loved on condition that they provide something. And the women, children, and dogs are the only ones who are loved unconditionally. So that statement here talk about comedy, right? But you notice with these days, my comedians, especially my stand-up comedians, they say a lot of truths, and those people are very intelligent.
My social commentator.
Exactly. Of course, one of the songs is one comedy, but one of the is very true. So men are usually loved on condition that they provide something. At the same time, ka element ukapinda pa problem ukada kutaura, you are loved it. I can give an example, very common, like if a man is a victim of gender-based violence, there are many cases around the world where if they try to report, want to say police.
It's that stigma.
Yeah, want to say at the same time
violence foot.
Yeah, violence foot. I remember I was recording this guy from Switzerland, I won't mention his name, and he was telling me that he's having issues with his wife. And the women have got so much power. Then we report a priest to Wamurova and Anzomusunga personal due process. And the wife called. You could hear phone is super loud, engines of voice by the end of the period, by the end of the period he was mentally disturbed. So one artist was in Zimbabwe. Wanga has collaboration to accompany him back to Switzerland because of stress. So he had no one to speak to because and you find that in most cases no one is willing to listen to a man unless they are getting paid. One, unless actually a psychologist or counselor who is getting paid. So no one is willing to listen to men. So that idea which it's not just based on the fact that men are told to be strong, not to cry. It's also based on the fact that so end result, men just close up. And my effects are concealed the anger. If you have concealed the anger,
it builds up.
It builds up, and you can end up depressed. You can end up mentally disturbed, and depression is one major contributor factor to suicides. So that's what I meant on that chapter.
We are looking at the book Man Vacuum by Mukundu. This is the program In Focus, Book Review Mondays. We are trying as much as possible to cultivate a culture of reading and also supporting our authors. I'm always about supporting local authors especially. I know some of us have an interest in different kinds of genres of writing, but I always believe we need to also support our local authors' different writings. And today's particular book also brings to attention a concern in society where a lot of men feel they're being left out. A lot of men feel they don't have a platform to speak out. A lot of men are depressed. A lot of men are taking their lives. There is a lot of challenges affecting our men in our society, and hence why we need to help our men. Power Vacuum, where the biggest casualty of the onslaught on masculinity is the family unit, you say. And you're saying, looking at today's society, you can clearly tell that there is a hidden underlying hatred of the family setup.
Yeah, that hatred which is being spread around, and usually by radical feminists, where they speak against the family setup, They make fun of stay-at-home moms, forgetting that being a stay-at-home mom is a full-time job, and it contributes a lot to the growth of the children. Because, but as these days, they grow up being raised by kind of 10 nannies. By the time I know that adult, I know what's going to be and they bring their own values, and their mind will be busy working. So the modern day movements are speaking a lot against the family setup, and yet, as human beings, the best way to be raised is to be raised in a family setup, in a baba na mai around, where we take care of the children. So that element we bash the family setup and bashing stay-at-home moms, it backfires to what taste as human beings. Okay. So yeah, that's what I meant on that on those lines that you just read.
Now this program has a different twist to how we review the books. Because while we touch on some of the paragraphs and we get into some of the chapters of the book, we don't want to give you the full book on the program. We're also trying to encourage you to support these authors, to actually go out and buy these books for yourselves and read the book and appreciate, and also be a contributor to society. Let me just quickly turn to our WhatsApp. Mancliff Southerton says, Pagava paid for women in Pal back, yet men do are no guava, you said, yet men still have to. And then you said, if you see number Yoakazi trying to get class 2 driver's license, it's, I don't know what you're trying to say there. But at the same time, with due respect, we are also trying to bring a balance to today's conversation. But we also don't want to create another problem where it's back and forth. It's a competition between men and women, Kuti, who's having it better than others. But we're also trying to bring a balance to society where we also take men's concerns into consideration. Another listener says, afternoon, the presenter. Most of us men were suffering in silence and we're so reserved to say out our problems. We need an institution where we men should also report or get counseling. This is worried father. It's a very sad incident there. And if you just heard for yourself there, you hear what the listeners have to say. But you're also saying we're breeding spoiled brats.
That's a serious problem. These days, most people think if their child is naughty and spoiled, chirungu. Like I mentioned before, with the people copy what they see on TV, not knowing it's a script. It's not like in the Western world. Ukuthi mwana akapinda mbano ngosijamba pa matable tutora phone yako akutotsvaka games pa phone yako asina kukumbira. Because this was the way we were raised. Why tukadangora samuswe waingotariswa neziso chete na maiso and you.
What is the get in line?
Yeah, waingona mwana adzikama so. Because wetuti tukapinda mbano ngosogara pakona pako vainzi vakauya chigare pako nomurisa vanhu obuda. What do you be moving around chingotsika zvino? So I think Papa, it's another area for the modern generation with the Vanorongo see what you got as a Moscow. And it comes back to point the number is these days people are not maintaining, they are not raising children, they are maintaining children.
But the essence of motherhood, you say, how do we tie this to bringing that balance you're speaking of, to say, let's respect, let's celebrate that masculinity, at the same time, let's create a balance in society. How does that essence of motherhood come in?
When it comes to motherhood, Panda, just like fatherhood, Panda do a time with the children. And also, as society, let's stop idea of bashing stay-at-home moms. Because I respect a lot my stay-at-home moms because they spend all their time watching Tawana, and it's for the safety of the children, it's for the safe well-being of the children. But these days, manje, a lot of bashing here, my stay-at-home moms, and even my statements my preachers or my churches, my motivational speakers, some of these statements are not it go against well-being at teenage tribe promoter as human beings, like especially bashing of stay-at-home moms. Mune usimbe, pane mazita anotaurwa anzi vana dhidhi shuga yapera njani. Not knowing kuti kutoswera kaurita pamba ipapa achimonita kupera kweshuga ikoko. It's a full-time job because imagine kuti dai angachibhadharwa aipiwa mari one. So I think we are shooting ourselves in the foot.
Okay. I know it has a very limited time, just about a minute, but I think this we need to touch on. How do we affirm manhood in social spaces?
Manhood, like we used to Wakumana, they need to be told. They need to be told what does it take to be a man, and what is it from normal people, not from the TV or from movies. And to be taught to take responsibility, responsible, how to look after the family, so yeah, I think they just need to be taught the normal way. People from my generation.
Well, folks, you heard part of the conversation with regard to the book Man Vacuum. Now go out there and buy the book and support a local. But at the same time, it is time for us to also introspect and remember that there are many voices out there of our men who are crying for help. A lot of boys, a lot of men are crying for help. And we need not leave no one behind, because we have a crisis on our hands, a mental health problem on our hands, and our men and boys need us. Clive Mukundu, thank you so much for talking to us and sharing insight from your book, Man Vacuum. We certainly need to make sure that we don't leave any vacuum.
Thank you very much for having me.
Until next time, this has been In Focus Book Review Mondays. We will be reviewing another book. Who knows? The next author might be yourself. So who knows? Always be on standby. The name is Monika Chanda. Until next time, let's continue to cultivate a culture of reading, whether it's hard copy, whether it's an e-book. Come on, guys. Let's start young, let's start old, and let's start reading.
Well, it's monosophical. It is what it is. We say it like it.